Not that it was going to make it any easier, but the route for this year's Rás looked considerably flatter than normal, with none of the traditional mountain stages in Cork, Kerry or Donegal. It was about to head off in a sort of inner ring road around Middle Ireland, with stage ends at Emyvale, Tubbercurry, Listowel, Templemore, Abbeyleix, Rathdrum and Wicklow town. But there was still to be the traditional finish in the Phoenix Park. This year the Rás had a record entry of 197, and as the riders prepared, they were contemplating the 1100-kilometre trip that lay ahead of them. Gears had to be checked, bottles to be filled, farewells said, and of course muscles massaged into action. The Rás tends to draw people back to it time and time again, and among the 6 previous winners in the field was the 2003 champion, Chris Newton.
Obviously I won in 2003 and I didn't ride last year due to the commitments. But back this year hoping to do equally as well, I suppose. You know, go for the win. That's why my name's on the start sheet. But we've just ridden the World Track Championships at the end of March. So I'm kind of in a bit of a period converting track form to road form. It's going quite well. I won a race last week, so it's going in the right direction and hope they'll do well.
I'm hoping to sort of ride into a little bit more form through this race, so maybe sort of take it as it comes the first few days and really just try and don't lose out, as opposed to sort of stay too much in contention, and then, you know, as the race unfolds we'll see how we go in. But we've got a strong team here, there's not just myself and Chris.
I came back last year, but I was coming back from injury. I broke my finger. So it was a bit of a nightmare and I ended up not finishing really, so I've got some unfinished business really to do. It's very unpredictable. You can gain half an hour one day and lose an hour the next. And I think that's one of the beauties of racing over here, you know. It's just it's like an Irish World Championships, this race, you know, so you've got to be on your toes every single day. There's no easy days in this race.
To complete this year, this will be 13 Rás's. So it's been a race that's been coming to a long time. I've been in the top 10 overall on maybe 5-6 occasions, won 4 stages. So it's a race that I like to do well in. Hopefully this year, you know, it's the first time in 7 years I haven't been on the national team. So it'll be a bit less pressure on me, because when you're in the national team you always feel a bit more pressure. This time it'll be relaxed, and we'll have a very good team around us, like John Tonner, Kevin Dawson, Mark Lovett and Malcolm Elliott, all very, very experienced guys, so it should be fun.
The official Irish team had been weakened somewhat by the withdrawal because of illness of Mark Scanlon and the unavailability of last year's winner David McCann and the rider who came third in 2004, David O'Loughlin.
For the Irish team this year, it's a bunch of young riders, 25 and under. A lot of experience with Stephen Gallagher and Paddy O'Brien, they're racing over in Belgium. And a lot to learn for the likes of Conor Murphy and John Dempsey. But bearing in mind, these riders have won at home. They've won stages both in Munster and Ulster, with Dempsey taking the overall in Munster. So I think the hope as well, Brian Keane is only racing at this level maybe 2 years. He stepped up to the Irish team, and the prospects are very, very good for this young Irish team.
We have a record number of entries this year. We have 200 riders, which is the maximum number. We have 6 professional teams, 21 foreign teams, the Irish team, and I think it's 17 county teams. And that's really going to put it up to the county teams this year. With 6 professional teams here, the pace is going to be tough. They're going to be fighting for points, and it's really going to test the county teams to be able to keep up with them. But I think they're up for it.
Yes, part of the attraction of the Rás is that the international riders get to ride against those Irish county teams, and vice versa, of course. And this year the visitors had travelled from all over Europe, as well as Canada and the United States. While closer neighbours England, Scotland and Wales had each arrived with strong-looking teams. And as they assembled for the ceremonial start outside the GPO in Dublin, the weather forecast for the trip to Emyvale was very mixed indeed. En route to RD in the loud sunshine, an 18-man group formed up with 3 of those former winners, Paul Manning, Chris Newton and Andrew Roach. Also there, Eugene Moriarty, the Listowel man riding for Meath Cycleways, Tim Barry of Tipperary, Dan Morrissey, and rather surprisingly, the national cyclocross champion, Roger Aiken. The rain was falling by the time they reached the climb at Tulliesko, where Norwegian Morten Hegerberg took the 3 seconds time bonus ahead of Moriarty. This was the only stage that time bonuses were available, and they were to prove crucial. The rain was still falling as they approached Carrickmacross, with the gap now up to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. All of the Irish team were in the main bunch, but ominously they just couldn't get any time back on the leaders. As they went through Castleblaney, 2001 winner Paul Manning had crashed out of the lead group, and it was another Norwegian, Gabriel Rasch, who guided them through the town. Close to the finish, 4 riders jumped off the front and played a game of cat and mouse in their bid for stage-end glory on day 1. And victory at Emyvale went to the Banbridge man Roger Aiken, who led in Norway's Morten Hegerberg, with Kevin Dawson 3rd and Chris Newton 4th. 10 seconds later, Scotland's Evan Oliphant led in the rest of the breakaway group, with the main bunch a further 3 minutes behind. Aiken, a member of the Sean Kelly Academy in Belgium, had celebrated his 24th birthday a few days ago, but despite his heroics, time bonuses picked up along the way meant that Hegerberg took the first yellow jersey of the 2005 FBD Insurance Rás. But his lead was only 1 second from Aiken, with Kevin Dawson of Yorkshire 3rd, Chris Newton 4th and Malcolm Elliott 5th. Day 2 and the destination was Tubbercurry, County Sligo. 192 riders pulled out from Emyvale in pretty damp conditions, facing a cocktail of very strong crosswinds and headwinds, and as they continued west on a journey through drumlin country, little was to change for the first hour, except that was for a number of tired riders being dropped from the back of the peloton. In these conditions, it was certainly a case of safety in numbers. And this was still how it was as they approached the climb at Bella Valley Gap. At the top, it was Eugene Moriarty, who took his second climb of the day ahead of German Malte Urban, and the Meath Cycleways rider took ownership of the King of the Mountains jersey. 2 individual attempts proved unsuccessful, first by Scottish rider Duncan Urquhart and the second by American Donald Reeve. Then, with 55 kilometres to go, a 9-man group got clear, which included Chris Newton, Malcolm Elliott, Ireland Grant Thornton rider Conor Murphy and Philip Cassidy. Newton's teammate Paul Manning was one of 3 chasers, along with Craig Sweetman of Meath M. Donnelly and Christian House, a member of the British Fuji Bikes team. Gradually the weather improved, and so did the quality of the racing. With just under 30 kilometres left, Elliott, Newton, Cassidy and Murphy went ahead, and in so doing blew apart that lead group. Elliott, a former points winner in the Tour of Spain, must have been the favourite, but a thrilling finish in the Sligo sunshine saw Chris Newton and Elliott in a classic sprinting duel, the start of a week-long battle for the points competition. And as they entered the finishing straight, Elliott was ahead, but Newton came from behind in the nick of time to take the stage. Conor Murphy's good ride was rewarded with 3rd place, 1 minute and 12 seconds down, with 43-year-old Philip Cassidy coming in 4th, a further half-minute back. The group with the yellow jersey came in 2.5 minutes behind, and all that meant that Newton went into the overall lead. Chris, obviously a tremendous finish. You must be thrilled with that.
Yeah, it's a nice win. I didn't really want to get the yellow jersey so early on, but you know, a stage win's good, and the yellow jersey is a bit of a bonus really. So we're going to defend it as much as we can.
And there were 6 more days to do that. The following day in Tubbercurry, Philip Cassidy, twice a winner of the Rás and riding this year on the same team as his son Mark, was getting his pre-stage leg massage.
I came into the race with a view to win the stage as my goal, and it went close. I think the last drag when Chris Newton attacked, he attacked twice. I went the first time, I couldn't go the second time with him, and I was a bit disappointed at the finish. But then when I weighed it up and you've world champions beating you, well, you can't be too disappointed either. But it's a great thrill to be here. It's definitely my last race, and I won't go again after this year. And I want to try and go out on a high note if I can.
Before the start, the riders observed a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the 5 young girls who had died in a bus crash the previous day in County Meath. As well as that, the 2 Meath teams took a decision to wear black armbands for the day. And so the race continued, and going through Charlestown very early on the 156-kilometre stage to Listowel, the peloton was still intact. At the first climb of the day at Knock Airport, Eugene Moriarty of Meath Cycleways stretched his lead in the King of the Mountains competition, even though he was just pipped by Julian Wynne on this one. Most of today's stage, the first dry one of the week, was ridden on wide open roads, and up as far as Oranmore, 2 riders stayed ahead of the pack, Paul Helian of Dublin Usher and Mark Lovett of the Yorkshire team. Lovett's Yorkshire teammate Kevin Dawson had been expected to challenge for overall honours this year, but an injury to him meant that Lovett, John Tanner, Tommy Evans and Malcolm Elliott would have to fly the team flag instead. Lovett had never won a stage on the Ross. But once they pulled off towards the Purran, there was a six-man group just ahead of the main field that was to stay clear through Ballyvaughan. There was a bad crash approaching the second climb at Corkscrew Hill, and this snaking climb was to bring them all together again and also sort this third stage out. This was a climb that was used by the professionals when the Nissan Classic was staged here in the early 90s, and today's spectators certainly had a spectacular view. Tipperary Dan Morrissey came home fifth, with Stephen Gallagher of Ireland Grant Thornton sixth. But after three stages, it was a very strong-looking Chris Newton still in yellow, 8 seconds clear of Elliott. But Tim Barry's performance had lifted the Cork man into fourth place, 2.5 minutes behind, while Conor Murphy was still in ninth place, but now 5 minutes off the pace. And this was the official confirmation of the leaders after stage 3. Day 4 of the FBD Insurance Rás, and true to form, the rain fell on the start at Listowel, but that didn't seem to worry the leading Irishman in GC.
A fourth overall, so I have to be happy with that. I've never been this high up on the Rás, but it's windy and wet today, so anything could happen. I mean, the thing they'll say about the Rás is look at the GC sheet today, turn it upside down, and that could be the sheet tomorrow. So we'll see. I mean, if I get a bit of luck and I hold the form until the Wicklow Mountains on Saturday, I'll hope to obviously maybe, you know, definitely hold on to where I am, maybe improve. The guys ahead of me are very strong. I mean, they're all full-time bike riders. I'm coming from working 9 to 5 and training in the evening, so maybe at the end of the week I'll probably end up getting maybe a bit more tired than them.
There's still a long way to go. Weather's going to play a bit of a factor, I think, along the way, and we're just going to try and sort of put the yellow jersey team under pressure, that sort of thing, and, you know, and seeing if they crack, and you know, shaking it all up and seeing how things land.
But it was going to be very difficult indeed to break the stranglehold that the Great Britain recycling squad had taken on this race. As they headed east again, thankfully the weather was to improve during the course of this 162-kilometre stage. Going through Ennis, Philip Cassidy, Stephen Gallagher, Tommy Evans and Dennis Lynch were in an 8-man group. But in a pattern to be repeated many times during the week, the Great Britain team drove the bunch as fast as was necessary to defend their yellow jersey. By the time they reached O'Brien's Bridge, an 11-man group had gone over 2 minutes clear. And as Tommy Evans and his teammate Mark Lovett led this group over the Shannon, the gap was up slightly to 2 minutes and 10 seconds. As the Rás progressed into Tipperary through Bird Hill, the peloton was reacting. And understandably, up front, that lead group was getting a bit edgy. Once again, the final climb of the day was to prove decisive. As they started the ascent up to Carini Cross, the gap was down to 1.5 minutes. The threat of the approaching bunch was to cause a few crashes on the other side of this climb, including Philip Cassidy, who had been second behind Mark Lovett over the top. The large crowd, including some fresh-looking guards, were anticipating an exciting finish in Templemore, and they certainly got one. Most of the leaders were to be caught, with Lovett the last one to be hauled in, and the long straight finish at Templemore witnessed the first bunch sprint of the week, with the same double act topping the bill. This time Malcolm Elliott getting the better of Chris Newton, with Eugene Moriarty third and Paul Helian of Dublin Usher fourth.
Once more, let's hear it for Malcolm Elliott. Chris Newton. These are the men of the Rás.
The last 2 days I've been kind of not quite up to par, you know, just missing that edge, and today fortunately all fell into place.
Eugene, another good ride today, 3rd place. You must be pretty pleased with that.
I certainly am. A little disappointed that I didn't do better in the sprint, but that's the nature of bike racing, you know. You get boxed in with a couple of 100 metres to go, and especially with the class that we're sprinting against, and you have Olympic champions and you have former stage winners of Tour de France and Tour of Italy and things in front of me. So I'm quite happy, but I certainly think if I get the opportunity during the week, the way I was going today, that I could take a stage.
So with over half of the 2005 FBD Insurance Rás completed, nothing had changed at the top of the general classification, with Newton still leading by those 8 seconds from Elliott. Stage 6 was blessed with the best weather so far and some pretty interesting riding to go with it. At Urlingford, bound for the first climb of the day, there were 2 small groups ahead, but neither featured any of the top riders in general classification. There were 5 climbs on the way to Abbeyleix, and at the top of the first, the Category 1 at the Crag, it was Paul Helian who led them over, ahead of Yorkshire's Mark Lovett, with Duncan Urquhart of Scotland 3rd. En route to Kilkenny, a 13-strong break formed up, including Stephen Gallagher of Ireland Grant Thornton, 1997 winner Andrew Roach, and 2 members of the Meath Cycleways team, this time Philip Cassidy being joined by Stephen O'Sullivan. As they went round the Kilkenny ring road bound for Paulstown, the gap was just under 2 minutes, with the peloton once again driven along by the British and Norwegian riders. Up the picturesque Butts climb above O'Loughlin, it was Julian Wynne, the champion in 2000, who took one of his 3 mountain climbs today as he removed the mountain's jersey from the grasp of Eugene Moriarty.
Go on, Stephen! Go on! Go on! Go on! Go on! Up, up.
Between Castlecomer and Abbeyleix, another 8-man group went clear, including 3 Irishmen, 2 Norwegians and Mark Lovett. But there were others there just as hungry. There was still 30 kilometres to ride, and even though there were some strong riders in this group, they were still being constantly hauled back. But all the same, they managed to keep a slight advantage. The stage end on the main street at Abbeyleix produced yet another close finish, with Norwegian rider Morten Christensen getting across the line ahead of Simon Kelly of Cork Nucleus, with Sunday's winner Roger Aiken of Loud Safe Cycling 3rd. With 2 other Irishmen finishing in the top 10, Dennis Lynch of Cork Canturk in 7th place and Eugene Moriarty 9th. Moriarty was now joint 2nd in the mountains competition, 4 points behind Julian Wynne.
Julian Wynne, the one and only Chris Newton!
And so with just 2 open road stages left, Britain's Chris Newton was still well in control.
Tonight, after stage 5 of the FBD Insurance Rás, ladies and gentlemen, these are the men of the Rás!
We went early in the stage. We was caught on the top of the 2nd hill, and in the downhill I went again, and I went with 4 other guys, and we worked together in, and I was the fastest sprinter today.
And this is how it all looked at the top after stage 5. Stage 6 was to be the flattest of the week, but the reaction at the Spink National School was far from flat. I'm sure the unbridled enthusiasm had nothing to do with the fact that they were getting out of class. Well, as they headed out from Abbeyleix, it remained to be seen if anyone could make a challenge for the yellow jersey that Chris Newton had owned since Monday. At Carlow, Conor Murphy made a brief but unsuccessful jump. And so, to the by now usual pattern, between Carlow and Bunclody, an 11-man group formed up, including 3 Irish riders, Brian Keane of Ireland Grant Thornton, Eddie O'Donoghue of Dublin Murphy and Gunn, and Yorkshire's Tommy Evans. At Bunclody, the gap was up to some 2 minutes. At Gorey, 40 kilometres later, it was still the same. But with Evans contributing little to the group effort, by the time they reached Inch, the gap was down to less than a minute. Meanwhile, the top two in GC, Elliott and Newton, were looking very comfortable indeed in their yellow and green jerseys. With 25k to go, Evans and two other riders, Chris Belcham and Evan Oliphant, went clear. But was it all too early, with the likes of 2001 winner Paul Manning available to pull the main field along? With 5k left, Evans had to go himself, but on the edge of Rathdrum, all the leaders were caught. And just like the previous 2 days, the steep climb at Rathdrum provided another bunch finish, with race leader Chris Newton really powering up the hill. Newton coming in just ahead of Norway's Morten Hegerberg, with Eugene Moriarty 4th, Tim Barry 8th and Stephen Gallagher 10th. So with only one open road stage of the 2005 Rás left, it was all going to be down to Saturday's stage in the Wicklow Mountains. And the weather forecast was giving gale force winds and a fair bit of rain. Not ideal conditions for a track specialist.
Well, my guys in the team did all the work all day, so I just sat kind of in the wheels, out of the wind, and saved my energy really. I knew there was the climb to the finish, and the Norwegian team, they took up for their guy for the sprint finish, and fortunately for me, I had the stronger legs and opened a bit of a gap.
It'd mean quite a bit to you to get a second Rás title under your belt.
Oh yeah, it's a great race, and I'd like to win it again, so we'll see how things go.
Newton's lead was now 14 seconds from Malcolm Elliott, with Tim Barry still the best of the Irish riders, with the Yorkshire squad on top of the international team competition. And so to that penultimate stage, and the only chance left for the seemingly invincible Newton to be caught. As they headed out and upwards from Rathdrum, the rain held off, but the southwest winds were blowing to nearly gale force strength. Could this and the 7 climbs blow the race apart? Welshman Julian Wynne took the first 3 climbs of the day, including this one at Haukavana, to go further ahead in the King of the Mountains competition. The first significant break of the day came after those 3 climbs on the descent into Bolton class. This was a 9-strong group with riders from 5 Irish teams: Dennis Lynch of Cork Canturk, Philip Finnegan of Dublin Usher, Bill Moore and Sean Lacey of Meath M. Donnelly, and it was Andrew Roach of the Tipperary Worldwide Cycles team who led them over the bridge at Bolton Glass. A minute and a half later, the bunch came through. At one stage, the gap was up to 2.5 minutes, but Newton never seemed to get worried. "15 kilometres later, crossing the Blessington Lakes at Valleymount, the gap was down to 1 minute and 3/4 and falling. So, approaching the last 2 climbs at Sally Gap and Lugalaw, yet again the peloton was closing fast on those who had dared to get away. On the way up to Sally Gap, it was Dennis Lynch who led Yorkshire's Mark Lovett, and it was Lynch who was first over the top. But still, Newton was unruffled. And the final climb of the 2005 Rás at Lugalaw went to Lovett, and in so doing, he took the King of the Mountains jersey back from Julian Wynne. But close behind came the men in yellow, green and blue, still looking very comfortable indeed. On the approach to Wicklow, Lynch and 2 others went for broke, but Newton continued to exhibit the style and class of a track world champion and a silver medalist at the Athens Olympics. The Norwegians drove the bunch around the last few bends into Wicklow town, and it was their teammate Martin Hegerberg who took the stage ahead of Malcolm Elliott and Yanto Barker of Wales. Eugene Moriarty had another good ride, coming in 5th. Next was Simon Kelly of Cork Nucleus, with Stephen Gallagher of a disappointing Irish team coming in 8th, with the race leader finishing in 10th place. So with just the final criterium in the Phoenix Park, Newton was odds-on to retain the title he won back in 2003. He had a precious 14 seconds lead over Malcolm Elliott. On Sunday, the circle was completed in the Phoenix Park, and an added bonus was the first real warm sunshine of the week. It's a measure of just how tough this race had been that 41 riders abandoned during the week, but even so, it was a record peloton of 156 that arrived for the final criterium. It was always highly unlikely that second-place Malcolm Elliott was going to be able to get more than 14 seconds ahead to take the yellow jersey, that jersey that Newton had owned and defended since Monday. But with so many riders on the circuit, there was always the danger of a bad crash during the course of the hour's racing. Elliott did have the carrot of trying to catch Newton in the points competition, so Newton was always to the fore. But Elliott didn't go up the road, and at the end the stage went to an Irishman, Bill Moore of Meath M. Donnelly, with Julian Wynne 2nd and Morton Hegerberg 3rd. With Newton safely in the bunch, the man from Middlesbrough repeated his 2003 success. Elsewhere, the best county team was Tipperary Dan Morrissey. The international award went to Yorkshire. And while the points competition did after all go to Elliott, there was no denying that this year's FBD Insurance Rás was won by a true champion, Chris Newton.
You know, it's always great to win a race, single days, but to win an 8-day race like the FBD Ras, you know, it's fantastic because you've got to defend the lead all the way through, and there's so much things can go wrong and things can happen, so fantastic to win it.